Welcome to Solar Tech Talk, where we nerd out about solar technology, energy management, and energy storage. My name's Aaron Bingham. I'm product manager for BayWa RE.
And I'm Jason Burnett, technical sales support at BayWa RE as well.
Hey, Jason. We have got a super exciting show for folks today. We're going to be joined by Genevieve Laplace. She's one of the regional sales managers over at SPAN.io. SPAN, as many of our listeners will already know, manufactures a smart electric panel. It was the first smart electric panel that we were able to offer to our customers. And we're really excited to be catching up with them again and learning a little bit more about what they've done and about what they're up to in the market.
Let's dive right in. Hey, Genevieve, it's awesome to have you here on the Solar Tech Talk. And I was just hoping maybe you could give a quick intro about yourself and what you do at SPAN for our audience.
Sure, Jason. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Genevieve Laplace. I'm the regional sales manager for SPAN for the Midwest and Mid-Atlantic. I've been in solar for about 11 years prior to joining SPAN, and a lot of the same struggles and obstacles that a lot of our solar installers deal with on a day-to-day basis. I went through a lot of those myself since I've been on their side of the side of the table.
Yeah, it's great to meet you, Genevieve. Thanks for that intro. So can you tell us a little bit more about the history of SPAN and your team's overall goal for whole home electrification?
Sure. So a little bit of background on the company. Our founder and CEO, Arch Rao, was the head of product at Tesla Energy. And he looked out at the world and saw we have all of this smart technology. We've got smart inverters, smart solar, smart batteries, smart tech inside of our house. And it all comes together at a dumb electrical panel that hadn't been updated in over 100 years. And so he set out to reinvent the electric panel from the ground up, assuming that every home will be all electric in the future and every home will have solar and or an EV on it. So that was the goal to when SPAN was created. Our mission at SPAN is to enable electrification for all. So what we're looking to do is help enable more and more residential homes switch over to all electric, in turn reducing their overall carbon emissions and preparing them for the future.
It looks like you guys jumped in right at the perfect time. Like great timing in the industry, and definitely agree that it's something that's needed. How do you have? What are the best examples of why homeowners? I know us in the industry, we kind of see the connections back and forth between different products, but how are homeowners wanting to electrify?
That's a great question. We're seeing it in two different directions. Really, the first is and we'll hear from an installer later on an example that he saw, but homeowners are either building the home all electric from the ground up with the intention of reducing their carbon footprint. And some of the reasons that they're looking to do that, they want to reduce carbon emissions, they want to reduce pollutants in their house. So either the kids in the house have asthma, there's health conditions that are going on, so they want to reduce the overall air pollutants in the house. Another common reason that we're seeing homeowners want to switch to either switch to all electric or build a home with all electric is they want to be able to control the costs of their monthly utilities. So if everything in their house is electric and they own their electricity production with solar, that then in turn reduces their overall utilities, not only for the homeowners who are living there now, but for future generations.
That totally makes sense. I see why homeowners are out there trying to electrify and prepare themselves for everything that comes next, right? Everybody sees EVs as a future. There are electric stoves now. There's all these things before that we used to require gas or some other petrol for that now we can run, on electrons generated from hopefully a clean energy source. How about on the installer side, though? How can installers frame the conversations that they're having with homeowners to approach that idea of whole home electrification from the perspective of positioning themselves as an energy professional? How does this affect your typical installers, your typical PV installers' business model to be able to jump into the conversation at an earlier point with the homeowner, maybe before they're ready to have the panels installed or the batteries installed? But they still need to be able to electrify certain aspects of their home.
That's a great question. So what we're really seeing a trend is that installers want to be the whole energy consultant, the whole energy management. And by doing that, they're able to really be a contractor for life. They're able to be that installer for life. So not just solar, but also offering other solutions as well. And so SPAN fits very well into that piece. And what we're seeing is if a solar installer is coming across a homeowner that is interested in solar, but they're not ready to go solar yet, they have to replace their HVAC. It's burning up a lot of carbon emissions. It's really inefficient. What we're seeing is they're actually installing a SPAN panel to help enable that electrification journey and help start that electrification journey. And then they have their foot in the door for future work, such as solar, switching over to electric vehicles, and all of that.
The term electrification for all has popped up quite a bit, and based on what you just said, I mean, it's not just it's kind of like the installer, from the installer's perspective, the homeowner's perspective, and the flexibility of the system. Can you point to any other reasons that homeowners are looking to this option?
Yeah, Jason, that's a great question. What we're seeing is that there actually are a lot of obstacles for homeowners to start that electrification process. Many times we're seeing homes that are built with 100 amp service, 150 amp service, where there's not enough space to add an additional electric appliance, like an EV charger. That's probably the most common that we're seeing in the industry. When that happens, a lot of times it triggers a service upgrade. And in certain scenarios, that's just not accessible. So either the utility lines run under the neighbor's driveway, they're not able to access that, or the cost of that service upgrade is just unattainable. It's, $10,000, $15,000. So SPAN has become the solution for that. Since SPAN is a UL certified energy management system, what that enables installers to do is they're actually able to avoid that service upgrade in a lot of scenarios. And we can get into that a little bit later with our EV charger and how that works.
That's really cool, Genevieve. I've been really excited to see the role that SPAN is playing in enabling our customers to have conversations with their customers at an earlier point in the energy transition pipeline, right? SPAN is a great resource for installers who are looking at how do they shape their business in a way that's going to be a little more future proof. And we have a really, really exciting treat for the listeners this week. We were actually able to coordinate a conversation with yourself, Genevieve, and with Paul Krumrich over at Greenway Solar out in Minnesota. Let's go ahead and jump into that conversation with Paul and then come back here and talk a little bit about what we learned.
Yeah. All right, let's go, guys.
Oh, right. Paul and Genevieve, welcome to Solar Tech Talk. We're so excited to have you both here. I wanted to start by giving you both a chance to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about the relationship between SPAN and Greenway Solar as you do that.
All right, my name is Paul Krumrich. Like you said, I'm the founder of Greenway Solar. We had a technology company named SPY for the last 22 years, so we've always been in tech. And then when the Tesla solar roof came along and there were some changes in the, renewables industry, we jumped into that about 7 years ago. So we're the only certified Tesla solar roof installer in the Midwest in terms of like Iowa, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. And then we found SPAN right away and have really latched onto that as a kind of a core technology in most of the homes that we're dealing with in terms of renewables.
And Genevieve.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us, Aaron. I've been on Paul's side of the business in the past, so a lot of the questions, objections that they're getting from homeowners, I've experienced firsthand myself, which I think provides an interesting perspective. But yeah, Paul and I, we've been working together for a little bit over a year now, and made that introduction to BayWa as well. So we've been working together, and it's been a great relationship.
Yeah, we're really excited to be working with you both. It's been fantastic for us as well. And I know why I love the SPAN panel, but maybe, Paul, you can share a little bit more about your thoughts when you first discovered SPAN, and maybe tell us some of the reasons that you saw it as a fit for the solutions that you were offering your customers.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I actually remember seeing it because, personally in my home, we built a home about 5 years ago. really kind of a passive solar homes. We were really interested just personally in making sure that we did everything as close to correct as we could. And we actually went through some of those, I think they're called like drawer apps, but whatever, the stuff that you can clip onto your circuits to try to find out what you're using.
Sure. Yeah.
And they were not great, and it was kind of a bummer. And then all of a sudden at work, SPAN came in to present. I was like, oh my goodness, this is it. Like, this is it, And I think what they really did well was, ever since the iPhone or the iPod, everyone expects it to be like Apple, like easy to use, clean, crisp, they care about the aesthetics. And so when I saw it, I was like, this is great. And so that was kind of how we found it. And then we've been really happy with it. And we kind of brag about it to our clients day in and day out, And the only reason I don't have one yet is because we're so busy installing solar that I have to wait until winter for my crew to take time off to install it in my house. So, but it's on order.
Winter's great timing for SPAN because you don't hopefully have to be outside while you're doing the
and you
install,
can in Minnesota.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like how that fits the company. How do you see it, and how have your customers felt about it? Like, how does it fit their needs and kind of wrap into that electrification journey?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, one of the main pieces is just information, right? Like they say, when you measure something, then you're going to pay attention to it. And I think a lot of people just want to understand what their usage is. And so they can reduce and do better, or just see like, holy cow, we're using so much on X. I didn't even realize that. And so that alone is a game changer in my mind, just because it's accurate and it's relevant, right? Like if it's too general, you don't actually know what's going on. And so then it's hard to tweak it, but it's very specific. It's easy to understand. So I'd say that's the first one. And then obviously we're getting involved with people with solar and battery and some of these other pieces. They have an EV charger. And so then it really starts to play a part in the control of your home and how you use things. And so, it's one of those things, it's really a no-brainer. One of the pieces in Minnesota that's different is, Excel, which is the main utility, still pays retail rate for overproduction of solar. And so battery kind of uptake hasn't taken off quite as much as it will as soon as that changes a little bit. Minnesota, batteries are still kind of a luxury for people that just don't want power outage. It's not as much about playing the game of when you're going to sell it back to the utility and when not. And so really the other piece is if you're looking at battery backup of your house, a SPAN can save you so much money on the amount of batteries you have to have. And so then it's a huge kind of ROI play there for people that are like, oh, I don't need 3 power walls. I need 1, if I go with the SPAN. If I don't, I need 3 power walls. So that's been another kind of huge piece of our clientele's, the way they look at it.
That's really, really cool. I know that SPAN is a fantastic solution, especially when you're doing something with a new home build. It's also a fantastic solution when you're doing a retrofit. And it sounds like most of the customers that you're working with are retrofit customers. Is that right?
Yeah, I would say, so when it comes to SPAN, I would say almost 100%, if not 95% of new builds use it. And typically, a Tesla solar roof customer is super tech forward. Sure. They want all the coolest stuff, and SPAN's definitely in that camp, right? And you're not pulling anything out to put it in. The pieces where the retrofits work, which is like in my situation, we want to be battery ready. We want to have information. Nothing's really wrong with our panel. Everything's fine, but we want to do it. And so that piece is going to give us kind of that future proofing that we talked to a lot of clients about. Because it really is the hub for whatever you're going to do in the next 3 to 5 years, which could be, upgrading your appliances to electric, EV chargers, batteries, adding solar. So yeah, it's definitely, new construction, no brainer, and even retrofit, it's starting to make a ton more sense for most of our clients.
Yeah. Could you, a lot of our listeners will have heard of SPAN, but maybe they haven't specifically encountered it on one of their jobs or sold it to a customer themselves. Could you maybe give us an example of a homeowner who wanted to electrify and tell us a little bit about how SPAN fit into those plans?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, we just did a really fun project with this couple. They did a Tesla solar roof. They're kind of building their forever home. They went with all electric appliances, really from the ground up just planned it with all of this stuff involved. And SPAN was huge for them because they nerded out on it. They send us all these like happy reports of look at this and look at that. And this is how much, we're saving here. And we can, we found that our furnace was running a little funny, because of SPAN. And so they use it a ton. I mean, they probably use that app at their house more than any other piece. And they went fully electric from the get-go. And so for them, it was really a great solution that without it, I think would have not given them the information they wanted on all the stuff they had put into their house. And so that's a brief example we have of one client. Maybe Genevieve has some more specifics, but.
Yeah, Genevieve, is that like a typical SPAN customer in your experience, or what do you tend to see?
That's a good question. Definitely, I love the story of this homeowner in particular that Paul was talking about. Just because they were so eager and using the SPAN information, like he said, to make that HVAC more efficient. I know they reported specifically that SPAN was able to help their HVAC company dial in and adjust the settings to make it more efficient.
Wow. So they could see that the unit was like running inefficiently, and they're able to hold their HVAC company to account and say, look, you guys are costing us too much power. Like, let's fix
100%.
This.
Yeah,
that's really cool.
They were able to catch certain spikes when the temperature dropped by a certain level, and they were able to make those tweaks. And they reported that they were saving about 15-20% off their electric bill after using some of the insights that they were able to get from SPAN. Wow. I also love, so I know this is a great example that Paul talked about, fully electric from the ground up, but generally speaking, we don't see that as common. Generally, we're seeing homeowners go with one or two electric appliances, and anytime they're switching over to electric, the panels being touched, we're seeing that as a great opportunity to upgrade to SPAN. And so we're seeing things like EV chargers trigger that upgrade to SPAN. And so this homeowner particularly, they want to go with the EV charger, they want to switch to electric appliances. We're seeing a lot of homeowners, a variety of reasons why they want to go electric. And a big part of that is they want to purify the air in their home. So they no longer want the emissions from a gas range. They want to switch over to electric. For example, kids have asthma, health problems in the house. They want to make that switch over. So that's a common reason that we're seeing. And then the other is homeowners want the ability to control their utility costs. So they want to be able to control the ownership of their utility. So by having all electric appliances and owning the electricity production with solar, they're able to eliminate their utility bills for not only themselves, but future generations in that house. And so really setting themselves up for success in the future. So that's another common reason that we're seeing this transition happen.
So it sounds like your team is on the ground using SPAN to get their foot in the door with a lot of homeowners who are interested in beginning their electrification journey. I know that for solar and the growth of solar, the incentive landscape really played a big role. And I know that the Inflation Reduction Act included some language around main panel upgrades being able to take advantage of certain tax credits. But I imagine that there are local incentives that are also changing. And I imagine that the local incentive landscape also plays a big role. So do either of you have any idea what the local incentive landscape looks like out there in Minnesota? And can you tell us a little bit about how that's impacting sales or sales conversations, or maybe how you would expect it to impact sales and sales conversations?
Sure. So we always recommend checking to see if there are any local incentives available. So to start, Paul mentioned earlier in the conversation how many of the homes, especially Minneapolis, are on 100 amp service. As this electrification journey happens, more and more homeowners are adding EVs, electric appliances. that's going to trigger a lot of service upgrades. And so the utilities in Minnesota, to alleviate that pressure on the grid of having all of these service upgrades, what homeowners can do in lieu of that is install a SPAN panel to manage the loads and prevent the need to upgrade that service from a 100 to a 200. And so with that, the state of Minnesota has actually passed legislation that has now become law. We are waiting on the Minnesota Department of Commerce. Will be creating a grant program over the next several months that will roll out this grant. And what it enables is it's a grant for homeowners to switch their electric panel to a smart panel. So they specifically do call out smart panels in this grant, and as a alternative to doing a service upgrade when doing electrification projects. And with this grant, dependent on income, homeowners can qualify for up to 100% of the panel equipment and installation costs being covered.
Wow. That's a really exciting opportunity. And I imagine that there are others out there. Back in the day when I was kind of watching the incentive landscape a little bit more closely, the best resource was dsire.org. Is that still the best resource, or where do you tend to look for the latest local incentives that might be applicable in your area?
I know rewiringamerica.org is a great resource for specifically Inflation Reduction Act. But I think that resource that you mentioned is a great resource, a great tool to be able to check on what's happening locally for local incentives.
That's great. And Paul, you both had mentioned efficiency several times and kind of future proofing. Have you had any personal situations, I guess, when you're selling into homes where you've been able to, I guess, show the client, whether it's adding an EV charger, but how they can avoid, like, say, a main panel upgrade or something of that nature when it comes to using SPAN?
Yeah, I mean, where we get involved a lot is kind of they're coming to us because they're interested in either, solar or some kind of bigger purchase. The winter is when we're going to focus on, hey, SPAN as just a product upgrade, which will be kind of maybe through EV chargers, through talking to people about that piece. But, that kind of segue of, hey, there's other smart things you should be doing, because, solar to a lot of people is just the basic one that everyone knows about. And then when they kind of get deeper into understanding the SPAN, they see that as just as important of a purchase, And to your point, a lot of houses, in certain parts of Minneapolis, at least, were built with like 100 amp service and really old panels. So you have to upgrade anyways to a 200 amp panel to get solar. And so then it's like, hey, the jump to a SPAN, isn't that much more significant due to the fact that most of it's labor. And look at what you get, right? And so then they start looking at, I guess, the electrification journey in a different light versus when they were calling up, it was just to talk about solar. And so it's pretty interesting to see the customers kind of eyes light up and be like, oh, I didn't even know about this. And oh, I never thought that you could do that. And then, then that future-proof discussion starts ringing bells with them of like, well, yeah, I am going to want to buy a car someday. And yeah, someday I thought about a battery. And then you can say, well, by doing this now, you need to do it anyways with the solar upgrade. You're set up for the future. And then you can do X, Y, Z, And so then they start using the app, which is great. Things become easy. They're seeing everything, they're measuring everything, and they start to actually ask more questions and learn more about other stuff. And it's kind of a great tool, just to get more information on your house. So I'm not sure if that was of the answer, but that's kind of what we're seeing up here, which is that 100 amp issue is everywhere. I mean, not in the bigger homes, but in, Minneapolis, where we're located, a lot of houses that were built a long time ago that, the 100 amp panel is a standard. So
same is true out in my direction as well.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a big issue. My partner and I just put solar on the house, and we had to take the currently unused EV charger breaker out to be able to fit it, right? And so at some point down the road, we're going to be pushing up against the limit of that panel as we try to electrify, and we'll be running into a lot of these questions. Yeah, so it sounds like you've had a few cases maybe where you've had some customers adopt the SPAN panel before they've attached an electrical system and just used it to monitor their electrical consumption, maybe monitor how some of their appliances are working. Do you see the adoption of SPAN as folks, main panel, or it's always going to be a main panel, correct? Am I correct?
Yeah, I mean, Yeah. I mean, you
Okay.
can do multiple panels, but it's typically going to be a main panel.
Okay. So do you see folks that have adopted SPAN as their main panel being enabled to consider solar energy or storage down the road more readily? How does having SPAN on site change the conversation around adding solar or storage to any of your customers' homes?
Yeah, that's a good question. I kind of view, like our current mission is kind of solar for everyone, but I kind of view our position in the world as businesses and residences are going to want to control their kind of energy management systems, right? Like when you think about where things are going, like I come from, my background's more in like AV integration, so technology integration, but you got your lights controlled. You drive into the garage door opens, the lights go on in a certain way, your TV comes on, like everything is controlled. And that's where I think, the electrification journey kind of is going and then tying into that. And so if you think about the SPAN, like that is at the hub of everything. Like that is kind of, going to be the almost important piece of that puzzle, because you're going to have power coming in, battery on site. Your car might have, a battery you can use to charge, maybe not, depending on the warranty. You're going to have solar, you're going to have all these things that then you want to be able to control in a smart way based on what your utility is charging you, based on what your needs are. And so I would, we recommend a SPAN to people off the street, just because it's a great, it's the Trojan horse, right? Like you get someone looking at that stuff and then they're going to start thinking about, holy cow, what if we did X, or how could I reduce this? We just had a guy that just left our office this morning. He just bought a Rivian and he's worried about charging. And he's like, I'm saving $100 a month on gas for my Yukon. So solar isn't, I have a better ROI than you're even telling me, because I'm going to take that $100 a month off of your solar because you're generating it. And he was interested in the SPAN because he's a tech guy and he runs a SaaS company. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of one of those things that it's, the only piece you need is the person to want to know more. Just because if they're like, I have a panel, it works fine, now what, right? But that information piece is the real key. And if they're on that journey, then it's easy to take them on the rest of the journeys. And that's kind of our mission at Greenway is, we talk a lot about life of customer. Like our goal is 25-year life of customer. We don't want to install something and then be done. Like we want the person that's, okay, I want X, then next year I want an EV charger, like every 5 years, every 3 years, like we want to be their go-to on this journey. And so that's how we kind of look at our clients, and hopefully they look at us. But the SPAN is one of those things that's like, it's a great health check, like you go to the doctor, it's like, hey, maybe you start eating less sweets and run a little more. Like that's our version of the SPAN,
That's such a great analogy. I love that. Is that pretty typical, Genevieve? Do you see that all it takes to get your foot in the door when you're an installer that also offers the service of installing a SPAN panel is just that interest in knowing more about your consumption, that frustration with not understanding where all your power is going every month,
100%, Aaron. And we were actually surprised by that. We thought that the main reason homeowners wanted SPAN was to pair with a battery and or EV. Now we're seeing that trend has gone from early adopters more towards mainstream. So like Paul mentioned, homeowners off the street who want to have these insights, want to have the control over what's happening inside their house. And as an installer, you, like Paul mentioned, you get your foot in the door with that. You're the person who installed SPAN. When it comes time to get solar, when it comes time to get an EV charger, when it comes time to get a battery, they're going to go to that installer who installed their SPAN. They're trusted. They're trusted installers. So we're seeing that more and more, and we're seeing SPAN offered as a solution for homeowners who can't yet qualify for solar, whether it's too many trees or whatever the reasons are. That we're seeing installers actually lead with SPAN to get their foot in the door and then become that future installer for solar when the time comes.
Yeah, kind of position themselves as an energy advisor, an energy consultant, an energy professional. Yeah, that's really
Absolutely.
great.
That's the direction we're seeing the industry go.
I guess this is kind of from our side kind of question. How's BayWa supported from a distribution standpoint in the partnership with SPAN? And I guess that would be maybe a question for both of you.
Yeah. I can start. I mean, I think when you think about distribution, obviously having stuff in stock close to you and at a fair price is table stakes. But knowing I was going to be on this podcast, I'm the owner of the company, so sometimes I don't even get to know exactly what's going on. And I went around and asked our team, and like right off the bat, one of the guys is like, "Holy cow, the guy they got in Minneapolis is amazing. He's got 15 years experience. They're the person they call, and he's super helpful. They've got stuff locally, and so from our end, it's really the knowledge base and the experience. Because in an industry like solar and renewables, like the good and the bad of the industry is that no one has 30 years experience except for,
there's some folks out there.
I know there are, but like
pretty few and far between.
Every other industry, there's people, I've been doing this for 50 years, and so getting someone with even 15 years experience that's been in the field, knows all this stuff is like super helpful. Because we have experienced people, but we also have, junior people that do need that guidance. And so I really think from that perspective, having that expertise on the other end of the phone and not just an order taker has been really impressive from our perspective. So we appreciate that. Thanks.
It's really kind of you to say.
And then from SPAN's perspective, I know Paul's team had asked, where can we get this? Where's a good source for us? And I did connect Paul with BayWa, and I immediately had very positive feedback from his team about working with the BayWa rep and how easy it was to order it. I think I had the conversation one week, and I happened to be in their offices the following week. The SPANs were already on their shelves, so ready to go.
That's so great.
So they were, that introduction was definitely well made, and I know Paul's team has been very happy since the introduction's been made.
That's so awesome. We're so excited to be able to support you both at either end of this journey. We feel like the partnership is incredibly valuable. The SPAN panel was actually the first, electrical BOS kind of item that we added to our line card. And we did that because we saw the value in being able to get your foot in the door with customers who need to do other things around their energy management before investing in solar is really the right thing to advise them to do as a trusted advisor. So we're so excited to be able to be out there with you all. Genevieve, with your team on the road, seeing each other at shows, and Paul, we really love supporting your team as well. It's been a fantastic partnership in both directions.
Yeah, well, we really appreciate it. So thanks.
Awesome. Thank you both for making time to join us today on Solar Tech Talk. It was a really fun conversation. Is there anything else you'd want to make sure that our listeners hear before we go?
No, it was fun for me. Hopefully my analogies weren't too out there, but we tried our best.
Yeah, great.
All right. Well, we'll see you both out there. We'll look forward to it.
All right. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Genevieve.
Thanks, guys.
Take care.
So, all right, everybody, we're back from our conversation with Paul, and I just wanted to say thank you to Genevieve, not only for helping us set up that meeting with Paul and all the great information it provided, but also for recommending Paul to work with us over here at BayWa. That is phenomenal. And it's always great to get to work with new installers across the country, especially ones that seem as proficient as Paul about SPAN and our topics. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
And now we're ready to dive back in. Genevieve was kind of hoping to get a quick look into maybe the future of SPAN and what that entails.
Absolutely. So along the lines with our mission of electrification for all, we want to be able to provide more and more solutions to a lot of the obstacles that we're seeing that homeowners are running into when electrifying. So we will be releasing some exciting new features. We can definitely get into talking about Drive, our EV charger, and what that looks like, as well as some new integrations that we've released.
And the SPAN EV solution, since you mentioned it, is a pretty unique solution, right? It's a product that pairs specifically with the SPAN panel. and you actually have to have a SPAN panel in order to be able to use the EV charger. Can you tell us a bit more about that product, how it's evolved, and why is it a requirement that someone have a SPAN panel to use the SPAN EV charger?
Absolutely, Aaron. So as we talked about earlier, SPAN is an energy management system. So that's where the smarts come into play, being able to manage loads and being able to control things happening inside the house. And so we didn't want to just set out to create any old EV charger that you slap on the wall that does the basics of EV charging. We wanted to be able to integrate holistically with the home. And so SPAN Drive is the first level 2+ charger that's fully integrated with all of the loads happening inside the house. We wanted to be able to produce something that's above and beyond a typical EV charger, something that's differentiated, and something that's a much better experience on the installation side, as well as the homeowner having a much better experience without having to do a service upgrade, as we talked about earlier.
And you described it as a level 2+. Can you say a little bit about what the plus means in level 2 plus?
Sure. So I'm not sure if you've heard the phrase "eliminate the D rate," which we're seeing a lot of installers have to do.
Great phrase. I don't know that I've heard it either.
So anyone installing EV chargers is familiar with with derating it if needed, if there's limited space. So level 2+, it signifies that dynamic charging that's able to happen with SPAN. So with the communication with the whole home, what that enables us to do is actually provide an EV charger that has dynamic charging. And so what that means is it'll enable the maximum speed given what's currently available in that house. So the SPAN EV Drive charger plugs into the home, is able to communicate, see what's happening in real time in that home. SPAN will allow the maximum speed of charging that's available in that current moment. Let's say it's a summer day, everyone's home, blasting the air conditioning, all the ovens are on, you're using a lot of energy. Once there's no longer space available in that panel, what SPAN will do is actually throttle back the speed of that charge. And then once there's space available, it'll throttle back up. So it's that dynamic charging that's unique about the SPAN Drive.
That's cool. So if you had an EV on, say, a 60 amp breaker on a 125 amp panel or something like that, and you were, using 100 amps of power, just using nice round numbers, the SPAN EV charger would be able to detect that amount of consumption and say, okay, to stay within the bus bar ratings, I can only provide, and this is not the real number, but 25 amps of power in this case.
Correct. And then once that space is available, it'll throttle back up to the maximum speed.
That's really cool.
And so what that does is it unlocks, we talked about electrification for all. What that does is it unlocks that full level 2+ charge for any home, even if it is 100 amps. What we did was we did a little bit of research on our end of all the SPANs that are installed. So we took a look at our SPAN fleet to see how often are we running into scenarios where a 100 amp service is using 100 amps. And I'm gonna reference my notes here. So I did a little bit of fact check on this. So when we took a look at our SPAN fleet to see how often do 100 amp homes actually max out that 100 amps, what we found is that only 86% of homes that are highly electrified, so meaning that they have 7 large 240 volt appliances, have never consumed more than 100 amps. And for the homes specifically in PG&E territory, 98% never use more than 88 amps. And so we are seeing that even though we have this functionality with SPAN Drive, it's very rare that we do have to throttle that speed back. When we're seeing a use case scenario where they're using more than 100 amps, that event typically does not happen longer than 5 minutes at a given time.
It's kind of a surge event. Sounds
exactly. When that surge event, it very rarely happens longer than 5 minutes. So what SPAN Drive really enables for the homeowners to be able to keep that 100 amp service, switch the panel out, do a panel swap with a SPAN, and it enables them to add that EV charger.
Wow. And are there any other like features or abilities that come from this really tight connection between the EV charger and the panel?
Great question. So all of the smarts happen within the panel itself. So there's a few software releases that we've done that some exciting features that have come out with the SPAN drive. And so some of the most recent software features have been one, time of use. So time of use charging. So in utilities where we have that time of use billing, you come home at 4:00 in the afternoon when you're still at peak charge, plug in your EV charger. You can set SPAN drive to charge on a schedule when utility rates are the lowest. So utilizing that feature within SPAN drive across the country. We're also seeing homeowners do that to coordinate with their solar production. So they want to be able to maximize their solar production and have their EV charge off solar. So timing that in accordance with their peak solar production. Another feature that we've released is SPAN lock. So being able to lock the EV charger during certain times of the day so that, for example, your next door neighbor can't plug their EV in with your charger and steal your electricity. So that's been a request that we've heard, especially in urban areas.
Crimes of the future.
So with the control over the EV charger and that functionality, are there other aspects that same idea can apply to within electrified system?
Really great question, Jason. So we've had that request quite a bit, especially from HVAC contractors. A lot of homeowners who are taking advantage of some of the Inflation Reduction Act incentives, switching their HVAC over to electric. And wanting to prevent that service upgrade. So these are some of the problems that we've been working on tackling. So stay tuned on what's coming next. And that's definitely some of the problems that we're looking to solve.
Great. And I think even just a throwback to our talk with Paul, right? His customer had found an issue with their HVAC system because of SPAN. So it's great what you guys can identify just from the data and usage.
100%. And we're sort of moving into that space of being more applicable, not just in the solar and storage space, but also in HVAC and other home service appliances. We're really able to solve a lot of problems of preventing that service upgrade when doing these types of electrification upgrades, but also appliance management. So being able to keep tabs on how that appliance is performing over time is really key. And so I love talking about check engine light that we have on our vehicles, but most of our vehicles aren't as expensive as our homes. Why wouldn't we want check engine light on our most expensive asset and keeping tabs on the appliances in our house? So SPAN gives those visibility and insights into how appliances are performing, and it enables homeowners to make assessments on, does this appliance need to be serviced? Does it need to be replaced? And so that's something that's key that SPAN has really played a big role in. And we're excited to be able to enter into a lot of these other industries besides just solar and storage.
In that same context, Genevieve, one of the big components that would be attaching to many of these systems in the future is going to be home energy storage. And I've seen some really fun marketing taking place in partnership or describing a partnership between you and Franklin WH. Can you tell us a little bit more about that partnership? How did it come about? And what are some of the benefits that pairing a SPAN panel with a Franklin WH panel offers installers?
Absolutely. So as most integrations happen, really it comes from demand. Really homeowners and installers are demanding a best-in-class pairing, a best-in-class coupling. And so when a homeowner is going with a storage project like Franklin Whole Home, they're really expecting a phenomenal experience. And Franklin has a lot of great built-in features with their smart circuits. But what they found was that homeowners are asking, well, how can I do this with all my circuits? And so SPAN becomes that solution, and it's a beautiful pairing. And it was really something that had been in demand for quite some time. And so it was a very obvious, very easy integration, easy transition to couple with a product like Franklin Whole Home. So we want to be able to provide the best in class solution. And so integrating with products like Franklin Whole Home, we're able to provide provide that both for installers and for homeowners. And so what the integration looks like, it is actually a native integration, and it happened much quicker than we had initially anticipated. So both sides were very motivated, very excited to work together. And so this native integration makes it very simple, easy for installers. It's just a communications wire that runs between the SPAN panel and the Franklin whole home A-gate. And what that enables is a couple different things. So the first is it enables SPAN to be able to detect grid outage from the A-gate so that it can do the automatic load shedding built within SPAN. And so being able to have that flexibility over any circuit and picking any circuit to automatically shed. The second piece is that SPAN's able to detect the battery state of charge on the Franklin battery. And since SPAN knows the history of every single circuit in the house, it's able to use its algorithms to translate that state of charge, that 86% battery state of charge, into human speak or days, hour, and minutes. And so homeowners are really able to get the best experience with that beautiful pairing together of knowing when, of having the automatic load shedding, having the flexibility of any circuit in their house through automatic load shedding, and being able to change their mind of which loads they want backed up. So being able to change their mind before a power outage, during, or after, and making those decisions based on that.
And speaking of the load shedding portion, we're aware that there's a smart circuit for Franklin. However, it was limited to only a couple of circuits. Now that we have access to an entire panel with SPAN, is that component something that is no longer needed?
Yeah, Jason. So the A-gate is still needed. However, you don't have to use the smart circuits in the Franklin. You can, however, to enable, if you do want to have additional circuits more than 32, you can use those smart circuits to increase the number of circuits on that design. What's unique about the SPAN circuits is that you can control those circuits even in an on-grid scenario. So we love using the example when you've left the home and you remember, oh crap, I left the space heater on, I left the electric range on. With SPAN, you can look in and see, yep, I left that appliance on, it's pulling 200 watts, and you can go in and shut it off. And so the SPAN enables you to have that functionality in an on-grid scenario, whereas the smart circuits within the Franklin A-gate have that shedding during off-grid scenario. So you have a little bit more control over what's happening within SPAN.
Just got to make sure that you're not shutting off the circuit that the Wi-Fi is attached to, right?
Correct.
How do I get back in here? So is there a combined resource that folks can use when they have, SPAN with another storage solution or a PV solution on site? Is there one monitoring application that, a homeowner or installer could use to check in on how all of those disparate components are working?
Absolutely. So SPAN pulls the data from our integrated battery solutions. We pull both solar and battery state of charge, and that's all reported within SPAN. Now, if SPAN detects that the solar is underproducing, for example, they can then go into their solar production app and see more granular data on which microinverter, right, is underproducing. So all of that data is reported in SPAN, and so SPAN becomes, since your electric panel is the heart of the home, it does become the dashboard for anything electricity related happening inside the house.
And speaking of amazing announcements, I also hear there's a new promotion for SPAN. Could you speak a little more on that promotion?
Yes, we're very excited about it. So since we've combined with, we've created this integration with Franklin, behind all of that excitement, we're offering to our installers, if you purchase a SPAN and a Franklin battery in Q3 of 2023, submit those POs when you purchase through BayWa. Submit those POs to SPAN, and you'll receive a $500 rebate. And I believe Franklin has their own additional $500 rebate. So that's up to $1,000 in rebates when installing Franklin and SPAN in Q3.
And is there any limit on that? Does it have to be your first installation, or any maximum number that you could do?
That's a good question. Yes. No, there's actually no, I can fact check on this, but no limitation on the number of pairings of Franklin and SPAN for Q3.
So being now that we're in August of 23, right? We're into Q3. We've seen or we're aware that there's been a recent price drop in SPAN. And could you speak to that a little bit more and how we got there?
So absolutely, Jason. We're very excited to announce that we're returning our MSRP to $3,500 from the previous $4,500. So about a 20% reduction in price. The way we were able to do that is because we were able to ramp up our production and we were able to lower our costs. And so that's something that we definitely want to forward onto our installers so they can then win more sales of SPAN. And so this enables our installers to not only offer SPAN on battery projects, but also anytime that there's a main panel upgrade triggered. So if they're designing a solar system, they need to replace the main panel anyways. Instead of offering that customer a panel swap of the same 100-year-old technology that they already had in place, they can then offer SPAN at a much more competitive price based on that.
Yeah, we're really excited about that price drop. I mean, this was already a great product for value. It saves homeowners a lot of money. It opens a lot of doors for our installer customers. But at that more aggressive price point, we really think that, the number of jobs that this becomes suitable for gets expanded quite a bit. So, kudos to you and your team for all the hard work that went into achieving those economies of scale and getting production to a place where you could support that higher volume at that lower price.
Genevieve, thank you very much for coming on the air. Thank you very much for bringing Paul on board to have that conversation as well. And look forward to seeing what you guys are doing next.
Yeah, we love working with you and really appreciate your time today.
Absolutely. Thank you both so much, Jason and Aaron. It's been a pleasure spending this time with you. And I'm looking forward to spending time with you guys at RE Plus in just a few weeks.
Let's go.
All right. See you guys.
Bye, all.
I don't know about you, Aaron, but that was a lot of great information and super excited to see how our customers are using SPAN and kind of watch the success of the product.
Yeah, Jason, I always love catching up with SPAN. I feel like they are such a valuable partner for us. And it was really, really exciting to get to spend some time talking to Paul over at Greenway Energy about how he and SPAN have been working together to help him grow his business and enable his team to sell into new areas of the market. All right, Jason, with that, I think that we are to the end of our episode. This has been a really fun one, and I'm definitely looking forward to the next round.
Yeah, looking forward to it as well. Thanks, Aaron.
See you at the show.